Hello, my lovely darlings, and despite many interruptions from the distractions, both major and minor, and social media, I will admit to that, I have managed to do another blog post. Yay! Amazing but true. Granted, that is because I wrote most of this nearly a year ago, and I'm just updating the map and doing some proofreading. Well, by updating the map, I mean writing on the names of places and including more icons to denote where capital cities are. Granted, I am working with the assets that are not locked behind a paywall on Incarnate, but right now I don't have the time to do a full hand-painted map. Shame, but it is the holidays, so I'm having to do the work in the time limits I have. So, on to the main event. Hestia as a planet is geologically active with many mountain ranges, both major and minor, as well as distinctive environmental bands and a diverse biosphere, supporting many different races as well as ultra-predators such as the dragons. Surprisingly, the theory of continental shift is already beginning to circulate within the learned circles of the races of Hestia, although this is helped by the fact that both the dwarfs and elves have much longer lifespans than humans. So what to a human is the stories of their grandfather's grandfather is childhood memory to an elf or a dwarf. Added to this is the reverence for history and tradition that both races are characterized by, and the result is a much greater body of evidence documenting the changing face of Hestia. It also helps to explain why the great body of water in the center of the continent is a salt water body and not fresh, theorizing that it was originally part of a sea that led to the ocean that has since been isolated by the shifting bones of the land. There is also evidence that the overall ocean level was lower at some point in the past, with diving species such as the coral dragons reporting the discoveries of submerged cities below the waves in the comparatively shallow coastal shelf areas of the oceans. This hints at the land masses being larger at some point in the past, though even the longest lived races cannot say when, some even speculating that it was before the events of the God War. It should also be noticed that the surface of Hestia and the depths of her oceans are not the only habitat of Hestia, and travellers should be aware of creatures rising from these more hidden environs to hunt. Regions. Northwest corner, the focus of today's episode. West. To the northwest, separated from the mainland by a channel of the ocean, is the ruined kingdom of Albion. As discussed in the Hestia Historical, this once thriving island heart of the Albion Empire was decimated by the attentions of the tomb dragon Asar Mockblight 1,000 years ago. Having driven the expansion of the Albion Empire beyond sustainability, he watched it fall to the ravening energies of the Day of Reclamation and claimed the destroyed capital as his lair. Oh, hello. Interruption time. Could you settle down, please, Chicory? Not my face. I know where that mouth has been. Oh. No. Come on. Yeah, come on. Settle down. Yep, okay. Warmed by an ocean current bringing hot water from the tropics, Albion is a temperate island and would be pleasant if it wasn't for the fact that the land now crawls with the undead. The victims of the Day of Reclamation shamble and crawl across the land as the sun goes down. Those whose bodies have decayed completely billow and wail as disembodied spirits, trapped in the last moments of free will they possessed before the ritual destroyed them. Some gather around ruins that bear the signs of being schools at one point, as if seeking the children that were once theirs. If any children survive the Day of Reclamation, it is unknown, but unlikely. If they did and managed to build a secure settlement, then they have never managed to contact the outside world, leaving the status of the once globe-encompassing empire unclear. Stop that. A few adventurers that have braved the shores of the Isle of Albion report a gloomy, mist-shrouded country where the sun is never bright even at midday. The vegetation is dark-leafed and unpalatable, and large animals are absent. The largest carnivores appear to be foxes, the largest omnivores are badgers, and the largest herbivores are hares and rabbits. There has also been a behavior shift among the badgers, with these big shuffling muscaloids or muscalids now a daytime forager, retreating to their burrows as the sun goes down. The only creatures apparently safe at night being insects, owls, and bats. In short, the Isle of Albion is a hostile place with nothing to trade with the outside world. The only influence it still has on the outside world is the fear that the Ghoul Court may organize its madness enough to try and invade the mainland continent again, or that Armasar Mockblight's descendants may cast greedy eyes across the sea to the mainland and come hunting for other civilizations to destroy. On the continent, just to the east of the narrowest crossing point between the Isle of Albion and the mainland, is the minor mountain range of the Kebnesian Mountains. Hidden within this mountain range is the kingdom of Shush-no-mai. Isolated both physically and culturally from the outside world, the kingdom of Shush-no-mai seems to have no ready wish to interact with the rest of the world, or indeed even speak with their neighbours. This appears to stem from a cultural shift that happened roughly 400 years ago, and may even be a result of the destruction of the Albion Empire. The long-term fear of that event causing a generational shift in thinking that eventually cascaded into the fervent belief in the protective power of their god. Unfortunately, their religion appears to be what some would call high demand, and as such they do not welcome the influence of outsiders. What traders who do manage to gain permission to take goods outside of the kingdom's borders trade in furs, walrus ivory, timber, and preserved fish. The Kebnesian mountain range is divided in two by the Ben Izdar Gap, which Shush-no-mai is to the north of. Stop that. This tract of salt water and the Mustan Sea into which it runs is wild, unpredictable, and violent. Stop it. Cut by many bottom-tearing shoals and reefs as it flows up deep fords to interlace with the mountains. The weather is also cool, with mild summers and cold winters with heavy snowfall. This weather pattern is common to much of the area around the Mustan Sea, and has resulted in a cluster of fairly small kingdoms that are controlled by how far travel can be reasonably expected to be managed in the weather of winter, usually dictated by the outlying ridges of the mountain range, marshes, bogs, fens, and other such environmental features, as well as the hunting patterns of some of the more aggressive predators and more magically infused beings. Crones are common in this area of the world, as well as other members of the less pleasant fey creatures and courts. Local guides are advised, and as they are a proud people, the traveller would do well not to gainsay their advice, lest they discover themselves abandoned on the road. Further to the west and southwest, the kingdoms are larger and more politically active along the coast of the channel dividing the mainland from the Isle of Albion. In recognition of the threat still posed by the Ghoul Empire, many of these kingdoms have standing armies and advanced taxation systems to fund them. As such, they are economically and politically engaged with their neighbours, sometimes even indulging in short-lived seasonal wars as they struggle against each other. These conflicts are usually limited, as fear of the ghoul court and the orc hordes that call the mountains and wild places home remind the people that if they spend all their strength on destroying each other, then they will have nothing left to defend themselves against the larger threat. Example: Faran Sar curves along the coast, bordering the sea on one side and the kingdoms of Saksa, Darka, and Nora on the other, until it reaches the Gaidio Mountains. In times past, it served as the buffer between the elf lands and the deprivation of the Albion Empire. As such, it has a stronger connection to the elven peoples than most, maintaining an elvish ambassador within the king's court. Due to the influence of the Shi, the Faran Sar people have a reputation for being more refined and cultivated than many human kingdoms, even experimenting with a simplified script for its commoners and an expanded education system. This has led to a healthier population, with travelling bands of educators supplementing the village teachers and bringing equipment that reveals the hidden world of the tiny. A zoo in a drop of water is always a well-attended class, revealing not only the hairy things that can live within drinking water, but also the methods to eradicate them to prevent disease. Washhouses built into the same building as the village forge are also common. There are also rumours of a mechanical writing machine that is decreasing the time and the expense of books within the borders of the kingdom. News certainly seems to spread faster and further accurately within Faran Sar than in many other kingdoms. Between the influence of the Shi, a series of progressive monarchs, and the work of the righteous judge and his family, Faran Sar is a strong country. I hope you're not showing anything. Faran Sar is a strong country with a settled population. Despite this, its history is not without conflict, as the bordering kingdoms have had aggressive relationships with them. They see how the commoners are prospering and assume that it is because Faran Sar is much richer than they are, and therefore they covet those riches, not realizing that far from being vastly richer than they are, Faran Sar has merely worked to see a much fairer distribution of wealth throughout all their citizens. As the coast starts curving down to the southwest, you come to the kingdom of Portasia, bordered on the north and east by the minor range of the Guardio Mountains, and on the south by the major range of Althulas Mountains. Portasia is a sheltered, stable kingdom, carefully nurtured by a line of kings that have brokered trade deals and diplomatic relationships with its neighbours beyond the mountains, often acting as a neutral ground for negotiations and peace deals. The kings of Portasias seek to be a stabilizing influence on the world around them for the good of their own people, but they are not a sentimental family. People have their worth, and they will find it and use it for the good of the society around them, or the kings of Portasia will make them do so. They are also known to forge teams out of wanted criminals to deal with more aggressive threats, both within their borders and without. There has been speculation that these king's specials have been involved in the past with, shall we say, rather direct influence on the succession of the neighbouring royal bloodlines, but nothing has been proved so far. They do have a very stable relationship with Far and Sar, cultivated over many years. Though Portasia does not employ a standing army as such, all males over the age of adulthood are required to spend the afternoon of the day of rest on the village green, practicing with either the longbow or the crossbow under the supervision of the local marshal and weapons master. Some women have even insisted on learning the crossbow, stating that orcs do not respect their persons when one of the hordes in the surrounding mountains gets it into its head to come a-raiding. It is almost concerning that these women tend to have a greater drive for proficiency than their male counterparts. Reports being bothered by the occasional raid of the legendary Ash Elves, but these reports are dismissed as fantasy by other kingdoms who know that these beings are legend alone. Beyond the eastern curtain wall of the Guardio Mountains begins the forest home of the elves. These enigmatic people are divided between many different sects, and some would say races, though it is difficult to tell if they themselves categorize themselves as such. To those outside of the mysterious courts of the elves, the peoples of the elves seem to be as such. The Sidhe, also known as High Elves, and some say High and Mighty Elves, particularly the dwarfs. Known for their exquisite artwork, poetry and literature, the Sidhe also produce weapons of wonder, spells of world-breaking power, and vendettas that last for generations. Though these families' intrigues rarely erupt into full violence, as such behaviour is considered unseemly by the Sidhe, they are nonetheless bitter and vicious. Families can rise or fall based on the outcome of one mistimed word at a social gathering. As she-elves can live for 700 years or more, these family disasters can have long-lasting repercussions. She-warriors are also without peer, fast, graceful, and skillful beyond measure. There are very few that can best them with the blade, and their battle tactics leave foes reeling and bleeding from death by 1,000 cuts. About the only reason that they do not rule the world is because children are rare and cherished among them. That, and they look down their elegant noses at all others. As far as she-elves are concerned, humans and dwarfs are smelly, short-lived barbarians, hardly better than orcs, and due about as much regard. Indeed, the only advantage that humans have over elves is the sheer speed with which they can breed, but that is not enough to bring them any measure of respect from the Sidhe courts. The Sidhe are isolationist and keep to their cities and glittering towers, ignoring the rest of the world and barely interested if anyone from the outside of their circles comes calling. Perhaps it is best to leave it as such, as the Sidhe are known for being extremely cruel, even to their own kind. The story of the righteous judge, Viltinus Urivan, is a case in point. Having survived an absolutely vicious poison that laid him low for over a decade and aged him beyond anything that the elves had ever seen, he was sent to Farensar to be the ambassador to the human court, fully believing that it was only temporary. It was decades before he discovered that he had been exiled from his homeland and his betrothal had been broken behind his back, his one-time fiancée having married his older brother years before without anyone letting him know. It is probably a good thing that he was already attached to Morwenna Flamesong, the two-red dancer, whether he was admitting it or not, as Viltinus is an extremely powerful sorcerer, and he could have potentially made the Sidhe court that exiled him seriously regret their duplicity. Metasan elves, also known as wood elves, slightly less aloof than their cousins the Sidhe, the Metasan live in close communities within the depths of the forests that circle the Sidhe courts, but appear to deal with them almost as rarely as humans do. This appears to be because of a cultural difference between the two races, one so ingrained that it has led to a slight differentiation in appearance as well as attitude. Whereas the Sidhe are tall, thin, pale to ghostliness, with white to golden hair and blue eyes, the Metasan elves are slightly shorter, of a stronger build, and tend to be tanned, with corn gold to nut brown hair. Their eyes also tend to be various shades of brown, with occasional individuals that have tawny or even yellow eyes. Their skill with the bow is legendary, and their guerrilla fighting tactics have resulted in their lands being declared untouchable by all who have an ounce of sense. Those who are allowed to a look at their settlements come back speaking of wonders and marvels. Their houses are grown from living wood, doorways set into the boughs of living trees, windows hidden among the branches, birds nesting in the foliage above, and bats flittering at dusk from cavities left especially for them. There is no hard and fast boundary between the forest and the homes of the Metasan, only a slightly higher abundance of food trees and shade-tolerant crops dappled around the settlement. Indeed, these food forests are now being experimented with by some human settlements to result in a communal food reserve in case that the more common crops fail due to bad weather. Though Metasan families can develop feuds and rivalries, they rarely take on the depth and anger common among the Sidhe. Their communities are marked more by common effort and working together to keep each other safe, and a respect for the balance of the natural world. They fear fire and drought and have a long-standing enmity for orcs and dwarfs. Orcs for their wholesale trampling and noise, while the forges of the dwarfs take the trees and produce pollution. The Metasan elves are cautious of humans, as humans can be as destructive to the forest as the forementioned races, but there are those that have learnt to respect the Metasan ways and tread lightly among the trees. Thus the Metatan are more likely to judge humans on a case-by-case basis than their instinctive distaste for orcs and dwarfs. Of the orc children, they have a more reserved opinion, though historically they have despised them for the same reason as their contempt for the orcs. They have, in more recent times, been able to come to an understanding with this magically created race. If the orc children stay on their side of the border and keep the large predators and herbivores from the mountains away from the forest, then the Metatan elves are willing not to shoot across the border and start a war. Whether this peace will be long-lasting is anyone's guess. Ash elves. These people are the feared legend of the underworld. Before even the God War, it is said that there was an eruption within the ranks of the elves involving a rebellion against another race called the Begetters. Legends say that the Ash Elves remained loyal to the Begetters and retreated into the caverns, caves, and shafts of the underworld after the Begetters lost their war. Skin of charcoal grey with hair of ash white, these tall people are said to be vicious and sadistic to the greatest degree. Though many people dismiss reports of Ash Elves as legends and myths, some countries still maintain that they are raided by them on a semi-regular basis, with property damage and people and valuables stolen away underground to the Ash Elves' subterranean home. Indeed, records of Portasia state that, on occasion, people have been discovered stumbling in the wilds, ragged and wounded, babbling with madness, shaking with the memories of what they have survived. They gibber of cities built underground, of slave pits and vicious dark-skinned elves that delight in pain and torment. They speak of haughty matriarchs and warriors that fight to the death for their pleasure. They whimper of noble houses that claw and fight and tear at each other to become masters of mighty clans, each only holding power as long as they are the most ruthless and merciless to others. Sorry for the break if there's an angle change or whatever. Had an interruption from the minor and major distraction. Now, back to the program. These broken souls do not last long after their discovery. The trauma of what they have survived, sapping their strength and will to live. They rarely last more than a month after discovery. Some physicians who have actually examined these patients speculate that they are fed a slow poison antidote combination as part of their captivity, but there is no confirmation to this theory. Despite the disbelief of many, there are books that claim to be in-depth studies of the Ash Elves and their ways. These books claim that the Ash Elves are a society that is matriarchal in the extreme, with all power being held by the females with greatest status. They are divided into clans, each named, usually... Oh, hello, minor distraction, not the face. As I said, I know where that might have been. Settle down. Ah. No. They are divided into clans, each named after, usually, an animal of the underworld. Within each clan, the word of the matriarch is absolute. There is no arguing with her. Below her is a hierarchy of females, each scheming and plotting to exalt her station and further her position. Of the males of the clan, their sole purpose is to serve their women. Each male must compete continually for the favour of the females, and death is a regular occurrence. Among male ash elves, the only status and therefore the only safety lies in becoming the favourite of a female, and therefore father of her children. An ash elf male who fathers daughters is nearly guaranteed a permanent legacy within the clan. The only other method to escape a life of continuous strife and battle is to become a pupil of the begetters. These appear to be scribes, historians, craftsmen, and possibly wizards of the ash elf race, and offers the only other path out of the short, brutal life that is the lot of an ash elf male. Female ash elves cannot be killed within the clan, and even a politically weak female may rise in status if she bears enough children, but the scheming and plotting for position can carry heavy penalties. This can range from having their daughters assigned dangerous missions within and without the underworld, to isolation within the citadel, to the very worst, which is the transformation into a disgraced. Ash elf females that have been punished in this fashion are rendered sterile and monstrous. Most go insane and are driven from the citadel to live out the remainder of their lives as fearsome predators of the underworld. And there you have it, my lovely darlings. A case of the first of the updated and expanded Hestia Locator chapters, or announcements, not sure what you'd call them. A case of, I will try and supply the map with the videos, and it will definitely be in the blog. A case of, hopefully we'll get the next one done sometime soon. Fingers crossed, this is the holiday after all, but hopefully see you then. Be safe, my lovely darlings, and be kind.